usually go to the worst boxes. Why did he have to read every one? Finally, he turned and looked at me from across the room. He looked at me with pity in his eyes. But this was a pity that did not anger me. I dropped my head, covered my face with my hands, and I began to cry again. He walked over and put his arm around me. He could have said so many things, but he didn't say a word. He just cried with me. Then he got up and walked back to the wall of files. Started at one end of the room, he took out a file, and one by one began to sign his name over mine on each card. "No!" I shouted, rushing to him. All I could find to say was, "No, no!" And I pulled the card away from him. His name shouldn't be on these cards, but there it was, written in red, so rich, so dark, and so wide. The name of Jesus covered mine. It was written in his blood. He gently took the card back. He smiled a sad smile and began to sign the cards. I don't think I'll ever understand how he did it so quickly. But the next instant, it seemed I heard him close the last file and walk back to my side. He placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "It is finished." I stood up and he led me out of the room. There was no lock on the door. There were still cards to be written. Now, the reason why I share the story with you is to be used as a reminder. Not only does God see and know what all we have done and will do, but he also will still have time to do more cards, to the files that really matter most. To work at sharing God's love with others by sharing the stories of the Bible, by helping out neighbors when they need it, or by loving our enemies, just as Jesus loved us, who didn't show him love. So let's take a look at what the gospel tells us. Here Jesus is talking with his disciples and warns them not to idolize false gods and says to them, "Beware that you are not led astray, for many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and the time is near. Do not go after them." He is telling them about what the future will bring, that there will be war and persecution to those who believe in him. They would be betrayed even by relatives and friends. He goes on to tell them that this will give you an opportunity to testify. So make up your minds not to prepare your defense in advance, for I will give you words of wisdom that none of your opponents will be able to withstand or contradict. You will be hated by all because of my name, but not a hair of your head will be perished. Now, this isn't in my sermon, but it's been mulling in my head for the last couple of days. And a lot of the reason why it has been is that our confirmation students recently watched the film Luther. And if you've had a chance to watch it, I think you will understand why I'm pulling this in. If you haven't, we have plenty of copies. You're welcome to see it. First of all, I think most of us know Luther was a little strange. And he constantly questioned why God had put him where he was at. But at the same time, he himself has been brought in front of kings and dictators and have been asked, why do you worship who you worship? Why are you doing what you're doing? And he persisted in his conviction, and that's the reason why we're here today. So give that some thought. Now, I don't know if any of you have heard the legend of the Cherokee Indians' youth's rite of passage, but this is another thing that was sent to me. Email sometimes is wonderful. It goes like this. The youth's father takes him into the forest, blindfolds him, and leaves him alone. He is required to sit on a stump the whole night and not remove the blindfold until the rays of the morning sun shine through it. He cannot cry out for help to anyone. Once he survives the night, he is a man. He cannot tell the other boys of this experience because each lad must come into manhood on his own. The boy is naturally terrified. He can hear all kinds of noises. Wild beasts must surely be all around him. Maybe even some human might might do harm to him. The winds blow the grasses and the earth, and the earth shakes his stump, but he sits stoically, never removing the blindfold. It only would be the only way he could become a man. Finally, after a horrific night, the sun appeared and he removes his blindfold. It was then that he discovered his father sitting on the stump next to him. He had been at watch the entire night, protecting his son from harm. We too are never alone. Even when we don't know it, God is watching over us, sitting on the stump beside us. When trouble comes, all we have to do is reach out to him. Just because we can't see God doesn't mean he is not there. For we walk by faith, not sight.